All right, I pulled this example from the book to help you understand what to do with multiple securities. The only two securities they're giving us in this problem are convertible preferred stock and 5% convertible bonds. So when you're reading a problem, the first thing you have to say, how many of these instruments are convertible? Because it could have non-convertible preferred stock in it as well. So if you start out, let's start piecing together the information that it's giving us. Following information is related to them on December 31st. Common stock outstanding, 140,000 shares. I'll keep reading, but I'm going to punch that in my denominator, hoping that that's actually the weighted average share count so that I don't have to do extra work there. It's telling me I've got convertible preferred stock outstanding. I've got 25,000 shares of that, and I also have bonds. During the year, they've declared and paid a dividend on the preferred stock, and the preferred shares are convertible. Looks like the 5% bonds are convertible as well. Net income for the year is $820,000. We've got an income tax rate of 25%. First, let's calculate basic. And remember, we can't just take income on it. If we've got preferred stock, we need to go ahead and adjust for that in the basic calculation. And I need to figure out the dividend. So go up here and it says, during the year, we've declared and paid a dividend of $2.50 per share. They're not making us calculate the number of shares. They're giving it to us. That's very nice. So I'm going to take the 25,000 shares times the $2.50. And we had preferred dividend of 62,500. So remember, that's part of our earnings that the common shareholders aren't entitled to. So we're going to take that number and we're going to subtract it from the earnings. It is that number then, and I'll just carry down the denominator because we don't do any adjustment in basic for shares. And my earnings per share is going to be 757,500 divided by the 140,000, or $5.41. Now, before we can get to our diluted number, we've got two different issuances here. So I've got to do an exercise that I'm going to call the ranking exercise, because I've got to figure out which one I'm going to adjust first. Because after I adjust each instrument, I have to pause and ensure that it's still dilutive. Because at some point, sometimes they won't be, and you would stop and ignore them. So let's go ahead and rank them both. And by ranking them, what I mean is that we're going to figure out the relative impact on a standalone basis. So let's start with the preferred. Okay, so we know with the preferred, the dividend was 62,500. That's going to be the impact if all of those preferred shares were converted on January 1st. I would not have to back out that preferred dividend. How many shares of stock would I have to give people though? It says the preferred shares are convertible into 75,000 shares of common stock. Again, they're being nice and just kind of giving us this information. So if I take the numerator divided by the denominator, that says, all right, we're going to assign 83 cents to this impact. Now, we're not going to take that 83 cents and pull it up into our calculation. We're just using this for ranking. So let me say that again. We're not going to take that 83 cents and just pop it up into our diluted calculation. We're just using this for ranking. Now let's compare that to the bond. So the bond, first thing we have to figure out on the numerator is what the after-tax interest expense number would be that we don't have to worry about if all of these bonds converted. So they're 5% convertible bonds, and the principal is $300,000. So if I have $300,000 on my balance sheet, and I pay 5% interest, then I'm going to pay $15,000 worth of interest. But remember, I have to tax affect it. We don't tax affect the preferred because that's not something on our income statement, but interest expense is. So I'm going to take that $15,000 and I'm going to multiply it times 1 minus the tax rate, or I'm just going to do times 0.75. And I get $11,250. How many shares would I have to issue? Let's see if it tells us that or if we have to calculate it. The 5% bonds are convertible into 25,000 shares of common stock. So again, They're not forcing us to do extra math. So if I take that numerator impact divided by the denominator, I come in at 45 cents. You look at these and say, which one's lower? Well, the lower one is the bond. So we're going to do that first. And this is really important because you can have, depending on the order you put these in, it could impact when things start to become anti-dilutive and you stop. So we'll put that bond impact in first. So I'm just going to pick up the information I had from below, the 11,250 and the 25,000, and I'll pause. And now I'll say, what is my tentative diluted? We know I'm not done yet. So the tentative diluted, I'm going to take the basic number, right, plus that interest add back, take the basic shares plus the amount of shares I would issue. And now when I do my updated earnings per share calculation, I'm at $4.66. You have to stop and ask yourself, is this still dilutive? Meaning, are the shareholders in a worse spot? Yep, they sure are. Now instead of earning $5.41, they're earning $4.66. Time to layer in the next one. Well, we only have two. So the next one is the preferred. So we're going to pretend everybody had converted their preferred shareholders, I can't speak, converted their preferred shares to common. So now I'm going to add back that dividend that I had backed out for basic, and I'm going to show the number of shares that I'll issue. So now my tentative dilutive, take the sum, right? I'm adding that back in, adding in the shares, and calculating a new earnings per share. And I get $3.46. Now, I've layered in all my pieces. I pause and I say, is this still dilutive, right? Is $3.46 less than $4.66? Yes, it is. So that becomes the answer to what diluted EPS is. If for any reason this number had been above $4.66, we would ignore it and we would report $4.66. So let me say that again. We are always going to report the number up until the point where it becomes anti-dilutive. We didn't have anything anti-dilutive in this example. So when we pull in our final instrument, we're still dilutive. We're still going down. So the $3.46 is what we report for the diluted EPS, and the $5.41 is what we report for basic. If, when I calculated the preferred stock impact, if that number had been above $4.66, I would ignore the preferred stock impact and the diluted would have been that $4.66.